Now is no time to forget to record. So good morning. All right. We were just working through, this is a fake example, of course, but where I just kind of make up payment amounts and make up dollar amounts, but the general idea of finding the amount of interest that you've paid, it takes into account how many or what you are making in payments versus how much you borrowed. And so I'll leave that in the notes, but let's see here. I have so much to update you guys on. I was struggle city with those stupid practice tests. I made it, and then I was like, okay, it's too late to check them now. So I started checking them yesterday morning. And I thought it was going to be all breezy, but I had to get help with the programming. But the practice tests on Moodle they're all working beautifully now. Okay, so the Moodle practice tests. Let's see. Sounds like the Moodle practice test is now working beautifully. So what I've decided to do is today I want to kind of same thing. I want to, instead of keep going, kind of continuing and covering new material, I noticed that we don't actually need a lot of chapter 7 to be able to do the test. So, because we're using kind of these same tests for across the all the sections. So, so then what I decided to do was let's just cover 7.1 as part of our review. And what you'll notice is I'll just introduce some key ideas, but nothing has actually changed. It's just when are the payments being made, which I have been mentioning all throughout chapter 6, where for annuities, right, later we'll pay attention to when these payments are made. But so I'll just introduce that. And then what I've decided to do is I've put up a practice test that we can go through. But what I noticed when I worked through the tests and the practice tests is you have the option of entering your calculator entries as part of your work. And so you don't actually need to submit any work if you don't want to. And so that's something that I'm going to change on. So on Moodle, it says you still have to submit your work, but what I'm finding is there isn't actually a lot of work that you need to do. Okay, so you do not need to submit your work for test 3. Right, only if you want me to mark your written work. But if you're using the calculator, then you don't need to. So you do not need to submit your work for test 3 if you are using your calculator functions. Your calculator functions. Okay. Only submit your work if you prefer to solve these problems by hand. If you solve the problems by hand. Yeah. So you'll see what I mean in just a sec. But even so, the practice test has the same layout as the actual test again. So make sure you practice those. They're not for marks, but I think I'll use it as a bonus assignment. Why not? Okay. Before we do that, there's something else I have to do evaluations, and I did send out an announcement yesterday. We're not going to take class time to do these evaluations. I'll show you where to find them. Like I said, I would really appreciate it if you took the time to do these the evaluations. It says it's going to take 25 minutes. I really don't think so, but they are due on Friday. So if you go to your Moodle page, don't do trig there. If you go to your Moodle page, somewhere in your in progress courses, for me, it's on the second page, there's this formative evaluation of college professor. So this is where you evaluate me. And like I mentioned in my email yesterday, only the survey portion, the strongly agree, strongly disagree portion, that goes to my boss, and they keep a record of, how I'm doing. And then the comments go to me. So if you're short on time, then don't worry, you can skip the comments. I'll be sad to not read as much, but what's important is if you go in here, so the formative evaluation, and it's possible that you've done these for other teachers already. And so there's instructions, and I guess you have two options. Anyways, they're due April 9th. We're not using class time because we have a review to do. But if you go down to the very bottom, there's a survey link. Oh, and I want to, it should take you here. Sorry, I was showing it in my previous class. It says 25 minutes, no way. If you hit next, it'll give you a list of all the teachers who are being evaluated this term. And you go and you find me. And then you pick your course, and then, so these strongly agree to strongly disagree, those answers, those are what's important. And then if you scroll down, it looks like a lot, but it's not actually. It's usually just like a one-page bubble sheet, but anyways, laid out like this. It's really long looking. And then here, these are the comments that just go to me. And so this, because I always kind of wanted to take my time and write these, but if you're finding that you're short on time, then you can just skip those comments. Okay, good. So that would be great if you took some time to do that. And I did a little Moodle revamp. Let's see here. I found how to make all these collapsible so you don't have to scroll so much, but then it also hides stuff. So here we are in week 12. Oh my gosh, second to last week of classes. Okay, so I've got this practice test that I'm going to grab for us to go through in class. Create new note in this class. Okay, and then down below, there's a test 3 section. So same thing as the test 2 section. What I've done is, I'm going to revise this work section to match what I just said, where you don't actually need to submit your work. It's only if you need me to mark your handwritten work. But that's where I have these practice tests, and it's 4 parts again. I'm giving you 15 minutes. It was supposed to be 10 minutes. Perfect, found it. 10 minutes. And I'm kind of like, oh, that's crazy. So I am bumping it up a little bit. Let's keep that in mind for the final exam, right? Because we're gonna have to keep up with the Joneses. So try your best to aim for 10 minutes. I've given you 15 each, just in case. But okay. So we're gonna work through same thing as before, right? The PDF that we're working through is gonna kind of match with what we're doing in the actual test. So that'll be good. Let's see here. I'll just make a note here. Formative evaluations. That's for me. I would appreciate it, and I do. Definitely, I used to beg my students, can you please do them, because it's how you get more work. Now that I'm full-time, I'm a little bit cooler about it, but it is really good to have these done. So I would appreciate it if you could do my evaluation they're due Friday. Can't remember what time, but Friday, April 9th. And so got a little bit of time. Okay. Let's see, what else was there? Evaluations. I want to go through the practice test, but before we do, let's just introduce 7.1. I feel like that was it. If you do have any questions that come up, just let me know, but we'll do 7.1, which are on annuities due. Annuities due. Okay. So the only difference between an annuity and an annuity due is that an annuity due have payments. The payments are made at the beginning of the payment period. Okay, so annuities due and the due is the key here. The payments are made at the beginning. Payments are made at the beginning. And that's where the due comes from. And that's the link, right? The beginning of the payment period. Okay. Here's the thing, unless it clearly says that the payments are at the beginning of the month, the beginning of the day, the beginning of the year, then the default is at the end, which is what we've been working with, right? And so unless it clearly says or clearly states payments are at the beginning, use regular annuities from chapter 6. Use regular annuities from chapter 6. Okay. So the default is just assume that things are, so if it doesn't say, then you can just assume that payments are made at the end of each month or the end of each quarter or whatever, right? So unless it clearly says, and I will highlight clearly, right, then you can just assume that they're regular annuities and they are just at the end of the payment period. Okay. For us, because I'm just introducing Annuities Due. We've talked about them, but we haven't worked with them today. Only part 4 of the test for test 3 is going to be Annuities Due. Okay. So only part 4 of test 3 uses Annuities Due. Oh, another thing, I've bombarded you guys with quizzes, but for 2 reasons. They're mini practice tests, so it's just practice for the test. I made them all due on Friday, so you have from now until Friday to do them. They're just 20-minute quizzes. They are just little practice tests, so you can use them to practice after you've done the practice test maybe. And then, so you do have 3 more quizzes. I know that's a lot, but also I didn't want to have, we've only done 4 quizzes so far. So I didn't want to have 25% of your grade based on, 6 quizzes. So that's why I'm kind of boosting your quizzes now when it's important. So not by design, I'm just bad at remembering to do quizzes, but here we are. And it works out nice because it's just more practice. So I will say that these are kind of side notes. Where can I put these? Oh, well. Side notes. Quiz 5, 6, and 7 are all due on Friday. Okay. But definitely use them as practice for the test. But they would make good practice. You can put them off till Friday, but our test is on Thursday, right? So you're an adult, you can figure this out. But so they're all due on Friday, but would make good practice for the test. Okay, I think I even said which ones they're like. So let's see here if we go to, yeah. So quiz 5 is like part 1 of test 3. So once you've done enough practice, and like I said, we're going to work through those problems. So once you're good at quiz 5, when is it due? No, I made them all due Friday. I'm switching things up. I didn't want to overload you guys with, well, I still am, but does it say today on your end? It should say it's due on Friday. All of them are due, so all 3 are due on Friday. Awesome. So when you feel like you've mastered part 1, maybe go and do quiz 5 and see how it goes, right? I don't want you to be too disheartened with your quiz grades. I'll sort that out later. Don't worry. I'm not going to let the quizzes bring you down. So don't worry about that. Just try your best and use it for practice. And then it'll be done before the due date. How nice, right? Quiz 6 is like parts 2 and 3 of test 3. So once you're comfortable with those moving around in parts 2 and 3, then maybe go on and try your hand at quiz 6. And then quiz 7 is like part 4. And so again, just kind of use these to practice. Okay. So they're all due on Friday, but they would make good practice for the test. So, but I know you guys are busy and yeah, so I give you time. Okay, so those were my side notes. Here. Now we can get back to annuities due. So for the timeline, if you're making timelines for an annuity due, what changes is that now you need to reflect that the payments are being made at the beginning of the payment period. So timelines for annuities due look like this. So here we are today. And again, for annuities, I need to see the first 3 ticks and the last 2 ticks at least, right? So something like this. Okay. And what happens is we need to show that instead of, so typically our first payment would go here at the, let's say, kind of 1 month, 2 months, and then we'll go for 2 years, 24 months. Let's say that's our situation, right? So before our payment was being made at the end of each month, right? And so now, right, our first payment happened here at the 1 month mark. So now what happens is if it's being paid at the beginning of the month, right, it has to go and move to today. All right, so now we have this payment happening today, right? This payment that was happening at the 2 month mark is being bumped kind of to the beginning of that month. So we have these payments and they're all getting bumped. So you shift all your payments, they get shifted over one payment period. And so this payment is no longer, because it's going to get shifted to here. Okay. So our new timeline is going to look like this. So we draw our new timeline. Like this. So we have 1 tick, 2 ticks, ... second to last tick, and the last tick. And the PMTs are now at the beginning. They're all getting shifted over to the beginning. Now what happens is that, okay, well, if you invest, let's talk about large amounts of money, right? Because it's easier to wrap our heads around. If I say I'm going to invest, $100,000 at the end of the month, okay, fine. We know how to deal with that. $100,000 at the end of each month, crazy, right? What if I say, okay, well, I'm going to invest that at the beginning of the month, actually. Now, I would be really concerned if I was missing out on interest for that whole month. Hey, I invested $100,000. Where's my interest? You got to pay me interest on me paying this earlier than waiting until the end of the month. Okay, so for annuities due, we need to adjust for the extra interest that we make. Let's think about investments. So we need to adjust the extra interest for making a payment at the beginning of the term instead of the end. For making the payment at the beginning of the term, instead of the end. And it really makes a difference if you think about kind of magnifying things. Let's say you're a business and you invest $1 million at the end of each year versus at the beginning of each year. Well, you don't want to miss out on interest for a whole year on $1 million. People would be really upset about that. So we need to make those adjustments, and that's why the back page of the formula sheet looks so large. Because what we end up with here, sorry, just holding back to sneeze. Okay. Whoops. Let's see here. Let's not deal with perpetuities, but notice here at the bottom we have a perpetuity and a perpetuity due. We'll parking lot that until next week. Okay, so here, the only difference between the future value and the future value due, if you kind of dissect the formulas here, the only difference is that you've added on 1 plus I, which is the interest for one period, right? And that's all that's happening. So here, the only difference for the dues, right, versus the just regular annuities is that you add this interest. Okay. Same thing here. If you have a future value due, then you need to take into account that 1 plus I. If you know the present value due, again, you have to take into account that 1 plus I. Now, for our purposes, I'm just going to show you the calculator, and then maybe we'll come back and do hand calculations, right? But on our calculator, the only thing that changes is you have to change the mode on your calculator. When using the calculator functions, we only need to change the mode from and to begin, right? And then that will adjust all the calculations. This will adjust the calculations. That sounds a lot easier, right, than doing it by hand. So for this section, I'm only going to use the calculator. Okay, so mostly in the interest of time. Okay, so I'm going to adjust the calculations by changing the mode. We've already done it, but let's go back to our calculator. Let's see here. Come on. Okay, so remember, you see the BGN is over the payment button. So if you go second BGN, notice that we're in end mode. That's the default, right? So unless it clearly says the payments are made at the beginning of each month or each year or whatever, then you should be in the end mode. Now, to change it, you're gonna go, you have to hit set, okay? And notice that it says set up top. It's tiny, tiny, tiny on the screen. But if you go second set, it changes it to begin. Also notice at the top of the screen here that you have a little BGN reminder. So that's telling you that you're now in begin mode, okay? So if you're in begin mode, then you can go second, quit, and notice that it still says BGN up at the top, right? So if you've successfully changed, let's see here. Let's see if I can bring that in. If you've successfully changed the mode, let's see here. If it says BGN, you are finding annuities due. Right, so if you calculate a future value, it's a future value due. Okay, and to change to from the modes, so to change between the modes, let's see if I can do this. C goes second, copy. Second, copy. Begin mode. Okay. And then it should say beginning or end on the screen. So then you go second, set. And that's going to change the mode. Okay. So you have to remember how to change the mode, but besides that, there's really nothing else that you need to change. Everything else stays the same. So let's grab this practice test and get to work here because I want to get through it all. And what I'm going to do is I'm only going to do the calculator entries so that you can see those and so you can practice those. But then, of course, if you're doing it by hand, you should end up at the same answers. So here we go. Here's the one that we're going to work through together. Grab this. Okay. So the first question that you're going to have to do, so part one is only one question, and it's going to give you some rate, in this case 6.1% compounded monthly, okay? And you're just going to find equivalent interest rates for each of these scenarios, right? And so we're going to fill in the table. If you want to show work, so like I said, I ended up working through the test without writing much down. I jotted things down, but nothing in terms of work. So that's why I'm okay with you not submitting work. I'll show work here just so you can refer back to it. But so 6.1% compounded monthly. So then R is 0.061 and F1, and let's just call it R1 just for kind of completeness sakes. So R1 is 0.061, 6.1%. F1 is compounded monthly. Okay. So then first thing, this one should be pretty breezy, right? How many compounds per year? If you're moving to compounding annually, well, 1, semi-annually 2, quarterly 4, monthly 12, bi-weekly 26, and daily 365. A third of the marks in the bag. Not bad. So then what we have to do is we have to find I2, right? The equivalent periodic interest rate. And then the equivalent rate, we're going to call R2. Okay. So what we're going to use is that I2 equals 1 plus I1 to the power of F1 over F2, then minus 1. And then I2 times F2 is R2. R2 is I2 times F2. This here is going to be your F2. Okay. So it's just going to be the same calculation over and over and over again. First stop I2, then convert to the equivalent rate R2. Okay. So as a note, I would enter all the decimal places that you see on your calculator screen. I think it's going to specify accurate to the third decimal place or fourth, but just to play it safe, right? Moodle is weird. I would enter all my decimal places, but you can play around with it in the practice test to see what you can get away with. Okay, so let's get cracking here. If F2 is 1, right? Well, I guess first thing I need to do is find I1. I1 is 0.061 divided by 12. 0.061, oops, 0.061 divided by 12, just doing it on the side here. Oh, wrong. Not that the calculator matters, but this one's a little tricky for decimal places. 0.061 divided by 12. I1 is 0.005083333, repeating, but let's just ignore it. And I'm going to store this in 1. Okay. So store that in 1. Okay. I2, when I'm moving to an F2 of 1, and then I'm going to do it for 2, and then 4, and then 12, 6, 30, 65. What I'm going to do is I'm only going to do, let's just do the first 2 together. And then before I post the notes, I'll go in and fill them in, because I don't want to waste a lot of time on this when we're doing the same thing. I don't know how many times over. So if F2 is 1, then I2 is 1 plus store 1 to the power of F1, which is 12 over 1, which is F2, minus 1. So I2 then is going to be 1 plus recall 1 to the power of 12 over 1, then minus 1. So I get an I2 of 0.062733469. So then R2, so here, this is what I would enter here. So I'm just going to copy that down. 0.062733469. And then we said, okay, R2 is going to be I2 times F2. So it's going to be this times this. So that times 1. And then as a percentage, because rates are always percentages, times 100 puts me at 6.2734689.6%. Okay. Like I said, just keep as many decimal places as you can muster. And always check in, right? These equivalent rates should be hovering around the original rate, 6.1, right? 6.27, pretty close to 6.1, right? If you were finding maybe 3% or something weird here, then go back and check your work, right? So if F2 is semi-annually, so 2, then I2 is 1 plus store 1 to the power of 12 over 2 minus 1. So I have 1 plus recall 1 again to the power of 12 over 2, which I'm just going to do 6, minus 1. So I get 0.030890241, which I'll jot down here. And like I was saying, you don't actually need to write them down. I just want to show you where they came from. As long as you filled in the table, that could be all the marks that get. 0.030890241. To find the rate, right, I need to take I2 times F2, so times 2, is 0.06178, but then as a percentage times 100, puts me at 6.178048259%. Okay. So I'll keep doing those after class, but before I post the notes. So you can work through those, but you just do the same thing over and over and over again. Okay. Complete before posting notes. I better write it down. That's a note to me. Oh yeah, so the equivalent rate, are you okay with finding okay, just for my 2, okay, good. So I, right, just in general, I is R over F. So if you want to find R, right, then R is I times F, right, multiply both sides by F. So that's what I have here, R2, which is the equivalent rate over here, is I2 times F2. So remember, here's I2 and F2. So what I'm doing is I'm just multiplying across. This happens to be 1, so it doesn't actually change. But now 3% twice per year makes 6% in a year, right? So I2 or F2 times, you can go either way. 2 times 0.03 makes 6.178. So help. Awesome. Good, good, good. I'm going to delete that. Okay. So let's see here then. Let's go to part 2. I think part 3 was the one that took me the longest. I think it took me 5 minutes. These other parts took me about 3 minutes. So if you're, I had done each of the parts like 10 times already, but still, just something to keep in mind. Pace up. Oh, I will say, all these blurbs that fill out the chart below, they're all the same, okay? And we'll talk about them once now when we're filling in these calculator entries. And then it just asks you what to find, which is nice, right? If you're floundering between, do I have to find the present value or the future value? It'll tell you. In general, this test, you're only going to be finding the future value or the present value or the payment amounts, right? And those are your only options. So, but it will tell you down here. Okay. So, did I grab this already? Probably. Let's see here. So here, these are the same for all questions. So don't worry about reading those. Read them once and absorb that information. So fill out the chart below with the correct calculator values. Do not include any units and do not use any negative signs. Okay, so here do not include any units and do not use any negative signs, which is kind of the opposite. So usually it'll mark it wrong if you don't have the units. So kind of different now. This is only for the calculator values. Okay. Use a 0 in the chart if the value in the question is unknown or you're going to be calculating it, right? And then for the mode, you're going to use the convention of 1. So if you say mode equals 1, it's begin, right? So then you have an annuity due. And the mode, if you say it's 2, you're at the end. Okay? Just as a heads up, for parts 2 and 3, the mode is 2. And then for part 4, the mode is 1, right? Because annuities due are in part 4. Okay, so this is what you kind of have to absorb and take as, okay, these are the rules of the road, so let's get this done. So here we go. You've decided to buy, and I don't actually know, I just reworded an existing question. So, and I felt like it read weird, so I changed it, but maybe it doesn't make sense anymore. But anyways, let's pretend that you can buy a partnership in a firm. So you've decided to buy 25% partnership in an accounting firm by end of the month payments of $2,200, including interest at 4% per year, compounded semi-annually for 4 years. Forgot to change it. Oh well, doesn't matter. What valuation was placed on the partnership at the beginning of the payments? So that is the present value, right? So you can, as an exercise, try to figure out what sometimes it won't even say, sometimes it'll just ask you the question down here. Find the present value of this annuity today. So what we're doing is we're making end of the month payments. So end of the month means that the first thing I can jot down is the mode, right? The mode is at the end because the mode is when the payments are being made. What you'll notice is a lot of these values you can actually just enter in the calculator entries right away. So that's kind of nice. Okay, so end of the month payments. So the payment frequency is monthly, right? So then the payments per year is 12. And the payment amount is $2,200 without any positives or negatives. Because you are paying it, it should be negative, right? But in this case, because you don't want to include any units and no negatives, you can just go for it. So the payment amount is $2,200. Okay. And then interest is 4% per year. So the interest per year is 4. Remember, we don't convert it to a decimal in the calculator. Compounded semi-annually, so the compounding per year is 2 for 4 years. Okay. So 4 years with monthly payments. How many payments am I making? Well, N is the time times the frequency, which is 4 years times 12 payments per year. 4 times 12 is 48 payments. So N is 48. Okay. I want to find the present value. So if I have to find it, right, it says use a 0 in the chart if the value is unknown or to be calculated, right? So definitely the present value should be 0 because that's the one I'm calculating. The future value, if I'm paid up, right, if I've paid this thing off, should be 0. Okay. There, we've done all our calculator entries. So now it's time to actually do these calculator entries on our calculator to find the present value. Let me try to remember what they are. Okay, here we go. Oh, Candy Crush soda. Okay. All right. So if you've calculated, oh, and I should change my mode. I noticed I'm at the beginning, these are end of the month payments. So I do have to change that first. So second, begin, second, enter. So it should say end. Notice how it disappears on the main screen there. Okay. So if you've calculated your N on your calculator, right, you had 4 times 12 payments per year is 48. So now I can just put that in for N. The interest per year was 4, I think. The present value, I'll do 0. The payment, I'm making payments of 2,200, so I will make it negative. I will say this, for the whole test, it actually doesn't matter. So I'm pretty sure you can get away with just not doing any negatives. On the final, it'll matter, but for this one, it doesn't matter. Technically, it should be negative, right? I'm making payments of 2,200. 0 future value, and I'm making 12 payments per year. Hey, nice, it's already in there. And I'm compounding, I think it was 2 semi-annually. Oh, nice. So now I can compute the present value, which is the value that he's paying off, right? Or they're paying off, or I can't remember who it was. Okay, so I get 97,499,05524. Let me just jot that down so I don't have to do it again. Good. So what you need to do here is find the present value of this annuity today. Okay, so it says find the present value. So if you do anything else, don't do that. Include units in this answer. So once we're talking about the present value of this annuity, you do have to have the dollars, no commas, right? Moodle doesn't like commas. 9744 or 499.05, 06 if I round properly. Okay. The breakdown for all of these is going to be, this is 1.6 marks. So I think, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think it's 0.2 each. 1.6 marks. And the final answer is 0.4 marks. That's going to be the case for all of these. So if you do end up filling these all in, then that will count as your mark, right? So, or as your work. So then I don't need to mark your work because you've shown me what you've done already. Okay. So that's why I say you don't have to submit your work. If you wanted to do this calculation by hand, you're welcome to, and I will mark that. Then you would just leave this all blank, and then I would check your work. But if you're doing the calculator functions, you don't need to submit work. Okay. Let's do question 2. A 7-year-old child starts saving $10 per month in an account that earns 2% compounded annually. Notice that it doesn't actually say $10 at the end of each month, but it also doesn't say $10 at the beginning of each month, so we know it's at the end, right? The default is at the end. That earns 2% compounded annually. If they continue until they turn 65, yikes, how much money will be in the account? So $10 a month for a 7-year-old is a lot. $10 a month for a 50-year-old is not a lot, hopefully. So, so kind of interesting. But if they just continue this habit until they turn 65, how much money is going to be in the account? Okay, so first thing we need to do is we need to find N, and N is basically the only calculation. So that's what I said. I was jotting stuff down, but I wasn't really, doing any work. But I do have to find N. N is the time times the frequency. The time that I'm doing these investments, or the 7-year-old is making investments for, is 65 minus 7. So 65 minus 7 is 58 years. And they're making monthly contributions, so 12 times per year, 696. Okay. So my N here is 696 payments of $10 each. Then it just becomes a matter of kind of picking through this problem, and this is really only the information that we get, right? This is all standard for all of these. Here it says find the future value, which whenever we're saving money, I did have a hard time trying to come up with other ways to say blah 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 is saving money. That's always going to be a future value. Blah 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 is paying off a loan. That's always going to be a present value, right? So here it says find the future value, so it actually tells you what to do. But now let's just read through and just jot down information as it comes. So the payment amount is $10, no units, no negatives, right? Technically it would be negative because they're paying this $10 into an account. Per month, so the payments per year is 12 into an account that earns 2% compounded annually, so once per year. And then how much will be in the account? So there was no mention of them starting with some amount, right? This child started with 10,000 in their account. That would really help. Nope, they started with nothing. And we're trying to find the future value, right? So here, find the future value. So we know that that should be 0, because if it's something that we're trying to find, it has to be 0. And we should be, right, the default is at the end. So the mode should be 2. 1.6 marks out of 2, not bad, right? Even if you don't actually know how to use your calculator, you can probably put something like this together just from the information, right? And then 0.4 out of 2 is for the actual calculation, which you're welcome to do by hand or on your calculator. Okay, so let's do this one. 2, 10, 12, 1, 2. Okay. I know 696 was my N. It was 2% per year, compounded annually. Okay, and then the present value, they started with nothing. They're making $10. I will make it negative just to be proper. But like I said, it doesn't actually matter for this test, but let's just be proper. So the payment is $10. The future value is what we want to find, so I'll fill it with 0 temporarily. And then the payments per year were 12. Okay, that's good. The compoundings per year is compounding annually, I think. So I'm going to change that to 1. Enter. And then I'm going to compute the future value. And I'm just going to jot it down on the side here instead of trying to remember what it is. Okay. 13,039. I was pretty disappointed when I saw that. 13,000. He saved from the age of 7 till he was 65, or they, I guess. I did a gender neutral question. We have to include units for the final answer, right? So don't forget that. 13,039 and 77 pennies. Yeah, not quite enough to do anything. Although if they set it up and forgot about it, which could be easily done, right? $10 a month maybe goes missing. Then it's a nice surprise, a $13 or a $13,000 surprise at the age of 65, but not really retirement money, is it? Yeah, but a fun problem. Okay, so moving on. Let's do, oh, are you guys okay with no break and we just keep going? Because I would hate to run out of time for part 4. Okay, awesome. Let's do it. You're in charge of your own breaks. If you need a little break, stretch your legs or whatever, then just do it. I won't know. Okay, so part 3, a lot more of the same, right? Just having a glance here. Again, we're going to find a future value, and then we're going to find the payment amount. So like I mentioned, this test, besides part 1, where you're calculating those equivalent interest rates, we're only going to be bouncing between future value, present value, and finding the payment amounts. Just those 3, those are our only options. Okay. So let's just get through. Let's do these. And then I'll slow it down just slightly for part 4, because that's the only part that's really kind of new. You do not need to use any formulas for this test. So you can, but if you're giving me the calculator entries, that will count as your work. So I hope for you guys that this test is going to be just so good. That's my hope. So we'll see. Okay, so this is your one shot at just using the calculator. Get used to it. All right, so here we go. I deposit $150 into a savings account at the end of each week for 4 years. So assume my savings here, I picked a more realistic, and even this seems high. Assume my savings earn 0.5% interest, compounded semi-annually. Okay, and then here it says find the future value. But whenever I'm making deposits, I'm investing some money, I will be finding the future value. There's no other thing I might be finding, right? So, but here it tells you what to find, so should be okay. Let's just go through here again, jot down what we know into our calculator entries, and then we'll do the calculation. See where it gets us. I'd say the hardest part is finding n at the number of payments. And so I'm making, it's the time times the frequency. So for 4 years, at the end of each week, there's 52 weeks in a year. So 4 times 52 is 208 payments. So I've got N is 208. Oops. Oh man, struggle city here. 208. Close enough. Okay, so now that the N is done, then I can just kind of read through here. The payment amount is $150. At the end of each week, so my payment frequency is weekly, means I'm making 52 payments per year. And it's at the end of each week, so my mode has to match that. So my mode is 2. Okay. And my interest is 0.5%, right? So just be careful, don't change it to a decimal. It is just 0.5. Compounded semi-annually, so compounding twice per year. There's no mention of me starting with any dollar amount, so the present value is 0, and then I want to find the future value, and so, oops, here, that should be 0. Okay. Good. 1.6 marks in the bag. Right? No units, no negatives. We're good. Okay, this one I'm just gonna plug in here because you should be pretty comfortable with working on your calculator now, and I don't want to be flipping back and forth too much. That payment amount should be negative, right? Because I make these deposits, so they're leaving, money's leaving my hands. But again, doesn't matter for this test. Payments per year, 52, enter. Compoundings per year, 2, enter. Compute future value. I get, with units, 31,512.18. Even if you don't submit any work, I will still go through each of the parts for everyone and just make sure that if you forgot the dollar sign, I'll still give you that mark. But it would be a lot easier if you just kind of follow the no commas, add the dollar sign, right? You will also have the check option in the test, so should be okay. And make sure it's all good. But just in case there's something, then yeah, because I know the check option, it's just such a relief, right? So you will have the check option. So you should be okay. It's just that time constraint, right? But as you're probably noticing, these aren't taking that long, right? So I'm even thinking 10 minutes, maybe 10 minutes is reasonable, but I'll keep it at 15, why not? Oh yeah, so N, when we're making these regular payments, N is now the number of payments. So the payment frequency is what you have to use to get to the number of payments. So that's going to be really important. That's an important change from before, when N was just the number of compoundings. But when we have these regular payments, the N is now the number of payments. Does that clear that up? maybe. Oh, and it came from at the end of each, oops, week. Awesome. Good. Okay. So, ready for question 2 then. You decide you want to buy a new house. To prepare for this, you set up an account earning 7% compounded weekly, and you plan to contribute bi-weekly payments at the end of every 2 weeks. So it's at the end, and your goal is to have $588,000 within 5 years. And so this is the first time that we want to find the periodic payment, which means we have to solve for PMT, right? So N is still going to be the number of payments, right? And so we can approach this a couple of different ways, right? Let's just read across here, and I can just jot down information as it comes up, right? So 7% compounded weekly, so the compoundings per year is 52. And you plan to contribute bi-weekly payments, so 26 payments per year at the end of every 2 weeks. So the mode is 2. And your goal is to have 588,000. So the future value of this thing should be 588,000. No units, no negatives, 588,000. The number of payments that I'm making, N, is for 5 years, so time times the frequency. So 5 years at 26 payments per year. 5 times 26 is 130 payments. So these are unknown payment amounts. And because I want to solve for the PMT, I have to enter 0 here. I didn't start with any money, so the present value should be 0. So again, this is the first time that we're solving for the PMT on our calculator, so I'm going to use the calculator. I better jot down 137. Just trying to remember the numbers. Okay, see if I can do it. Okay. The piano commercial threw me off. I think it was 130 is my N. The interest per year, I want to say was 7. Let me just check. 7, 588, 2, okay. 7. The present value is nothing, so 0. I'm trying to find the payment amount, so I'll fill it with 0 temporarily. I want 588,000 as my future value, and I'm going to leave it positive because I'm making these payments and then I get 588,000 at the end. Again, doesn't really matter. I was making bi-weekly payments, 26 payments per year, enter. And it was compounding weekly 52 times per year, enter. So now if I compute the PMT, I get 3783.175033. Okay. So my periodic payment should have units now, right? 3,783 and 18 pennies. Notice that if we go back here, notice that the payment is negative, meaning you would need to pay that to get 588 in the end, right? So the negatives aren't actually negative amounts, they're just directions. And let's also remember that this is bi-weekly, right? So twice a month you're paying this $3,700 to have 588,000 in 5 years. Okay, good. So, all right, let's see here. That was part 3. Hey, we're doing great. I'll slow it down a little bit for part 4 because that's the part that's new, right? But it's not, I hate to say it's new. It's not really new. It's just the only thing that's changed is when are we making these payments. So for us right now, for this test, it really is just a matter of changing the mode on our calculator and remembering to check it when you move back and forth, right? Oops, go back here. Put this on a fresh page here. So the questions are going to be laid out very similar, right? The only thing that's changed is that now the payments are at the beginning, okay? So here, kind of rough start, we want to find the PMT again. And we only have 3 options, like I said, so there's really only 3 things we could solve for. So Borders Manufacturing wants to accumulate $2,010,000. Man, I have a hard time reading money amounts, large money amounts, struggle city. For an expansion plan to begin in 4 years. So that's implying that we have 4 years to come up with this $2 million. If starting today, okay, usually we start at the end of the month or whatever. Okay, so this one's pretty subtle, but if you're starting today, right, then now we're at the beginning, right? So if you start paying it off immediately, then you have an annuity due. Borders makes the first of equal payments, monthly payments, into a fund earning 8% compounded semi-annually. What size should these payments be? Okay, same idea. The only thing that's changed is recognizing, okay, that payment, all these payments are starting at the beginning of each month. But also, I'm flat out telling you, part 4 will be annuities due. The other ones, no, they're all regular annuities. Okay. So same deal here. If I want to accumulate $2,010,000, that's going to be my future value, or it has to be my future value. So let's start there. 2,010,000. No commas, no units, no dollar sign, no negatives, nothing. Hopefully I got all the zeros. 1, 2, 3. Okay, looks good. Okay, let's change that mode. Mode is now 1, right, for the beginning. And we're going to make monthly payments. So the payments per year is still 12, or not still, is 12. and into a fund earning 8% compounded semi-annually. We want to find the payment amount, so I'm going to fill it in with a 0. And there's no mention of them starting with any dollar amounts, so that present value should be 0 as well. And the only thing we need to find is n. N is the number of payments. So n is the time times the frequency, which is 4 years times 12 payments per year. It's usually 48, but I'll just check. 4 times 12 still is. So 48 payments. Okay. So now, right, let's go in, and first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the mode to begin mode, and then I'm going to enter in all these values. We did it at the beginning of the class, but you can use a refresher, right? The begin mode, we have to go second, begin. It's at the end, that's our default, right? But if we go second, set, it'll change it to the begin. So now notice it says BGN up at the very top. I don't have a pointer on the screen, right? But we circled it earlier. So now if I go second, quit, then I'm out of that menu and it's still in begin mode. This is like the one time our calculator tells us what's going on behind the scenes. It's kind of nice. Okay, so now that we've changed the mode, now everything is just the same. It's going to handle that change in interest payments and all that fun stuff. So our n was 48. Drawing a blank here, I think it was 7%, but 8%. Okay, committing to memory, here we go. 8% per year, 0 present value, trying to find the payment amounts, and then 2,010,000 to, looks good, is my future value. I'll leave it positive because they need to get that money. So future value, you can play around with it. It's not going to actually affect it. Payments per year, I think they were making monthly payments. Enter. And compoundings per year, I think it was compounding semi-annually. Enter. Let me just confirm that. Okay. There. 212 looks good. Second quit. And now I'm ready to make sure you're in begin mode. Now I'm ready to compute the payment amount. So compute payment amount. They would have to pay, right, which makes sense. If they need $2 million, they have to pay $35,532.25 each month at the beginning of each month. So I have 35,532.25399, just so I can jot it down here. 35,532.25 right, at the beginning of each month. Okay. Last question. Fun. Darla is what I named my first car. She was so good. Anyway, so it's kind of funny, at least to me. Darla gets paid on the 1st of each month. Okay, so on the 1st, kind of sets me up to be in the beginning mode, right? So Darla gets paid on the 1st of each month and has set up an automatic withdrawal to coincide with her payday to put $300 into a TFSA each month. Her TFSA earns 1.2% per year compounded quarterly. How much will be in the account in 14 years? So find the amount of the annuity in 14 years. That is a future value. Right. The PMT from the last question was 35,532.25 cents. Unless you got something different. Maybe my memory, maybe I jotted something down wrong. Is that what you guys got for that last one? Okay, awesome. Cool. All right. Good. Then let's move on. So she gets paid at the beginning of each month, and then she has it set up so that when she gets paid, it just takes out $300 right away and puts it in a TFSA. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read through and just jot down information as it comes. I'm going to skip the mode just until I'm sure that it is at the beginning. It will be. But we're making payments of $300. So the payment amount, is $300. And the payment frequency is monthly, so 12 payments per year. The interest we have is 1.2% per year compounded quarterly. So compoundings per year is 4. How much will be in the account in 14 years? So N is the time times the frequency. So 14 times 12 payments is 168 payments. So your N is 168. Okay. They didn't start with anything in the account, so the present value is 0. We want to find the total amount, so we want to find the future value. So in here, I'm going to enter 0, and I'm getting paid at the beginning of each month, and the withdrawals coincide with that, so it should be at the beginning. So it's 1 for the mode. Now this one I'm just going to do on my calculator on the side here. So 168 for N, 1.2 for the interest per year, 0 present value, 300. Excuse me. For the payment amount, and that should be negative technically, right? Because she's making these payments. Future value, I'll fill in 0 for now. 12 payments per year, enter. 4 compoundings per year, enter. And I need to be in the begin mode, which I wasn't on this one. Now I can compute the future value. The future value I find is 54. I should have made a little bit more space here. 54,901.28988, so 29 cents. Good. So hopefully this test feels kind of reasonable, even including this section that we kind of introduced today, but really it doesn't change anything. It just, you have to remember to change the mode, and then that's it. So you can do these problems by hand, but for the sake of the test, I would probably encourage you to just use the calculator functions, because that way you don't have to be so stressed out about time, right? So I'm glad we got those all worked through. Do you have any questions now that we have some extra time here? Awesome. Hey, that's hey, assignment 10. Do they have a set for life? That's awesome. You got it, Evan. Okay. If you have any questions, then feel free to stick around. Otherwise, it might be nice to have this little free time to kind of get situated and have a look through all your stuff for the test. I'm around if you have any questions. Otherwise, I will see you on Thursday if you want to be in the Zoom room. Awesome. Good.
Thank you.
I'll stop. Thank you. Stop this recording here.